Tom Petty's sudden death shocked the world. He had only just wrapped up his 40th anniversary tour, but the coroner's report revealed the tragic truth about his final days. He may have come from the land of sunshine, trailers, and gators, but this rocker was no Florida man. While running down his rock and roll dreams, Tom Petty found himself on a crash course with heartbreak, addiction, and more than a few shadowy demons. Funny thing about Tom Petty, he might have seemed like the ultimate laid-back rock legend, but don't let the cool exterior fool you. Sure, he was a relentless workhorse, crafting hit after hit. But here's the twist. While he nailed the too-cool-to-care vibe beneath it all, he was a bubbling cauldron of psychological chaos. You know you've made it big when your name becomes a verb. But long before the superstardom, the traveling wheelbarrows, the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, and selling over 80 million albums, Thomas Earl Petty entered the world on October the 20th, 1950, in Gainesville, Florida. His mother worked at the local tax office, and his father worked at making his life miserable. Around the time Father Knows Best hit TV screens, young Tom Petty was learning a harsher truth. His father, Earl, definitely did not know best. Earl was a drinker, a gambler, and had a nasty temper. Petty's younger brother, Bruce, figured out fast that playing by the rules and playing sports was the key to dodging their father's wrath. Tom, on the other hand, was a quiet, artsy kid who didn't want to fit the mold. Instead, he found solace in television, which opened his eyes to a world beyond his chaotic home life. California, with its sunny promise of something better, became his dream destination. And even as a kid, Petty knew that's where he belonged. By the age of 10, Petty's dreams of escape were turning into a plan. A lucky break came when his uncle, who worked on movie sets, introduced him to Elvis Presley during the filming of the ironically titled Follow That Dream. Awestruck, Petty rushed home and made a life-changing trade, his slingshot for a stack of Elvis records. Watching the Beatles on The Ed Sullivan Show was a flashbulb moment for many, including Petty. He later said, "It looked like so much fun. I knew I could do it." By 16, he was already rocking in a band called the Epics, but after a psychedelic trip at a party, Petty had a revelation. He'd never amount to anything unless he was in a rock and roll band. Things were finally falling into place for Petty and his band Mudcrunch. With a demo in hand and positive feedback from a label in L.A., their hard work was starting to pay off, but none of it was by accident. Bandmate Mike Campbell said, "I think very few people are as ambitious as Tom Petty. He just has that drive. Always did." Petty's personal life was heating up too, with a serious relationship on the horizon. To be in your mid-20s in the early 70s, cruising from Florida to Los Angeles in a Volkswagen camper van with your bandmates. For Tom Petty and Mudcrunch, it was all about the open road, good vibes, and, of course, a little grass. That is, until a towering Texan officer pulled them over and demanded to know what they were puffing. Marlboros, they claimed. The officer wasn't buying it. Soon he was tearing the van apart while the band stood by, helpless and inwardly freaking out. Their search for contraband was long, thorough, and thankfully unsuccessful. In one of Petty's many lucky moments, they had hidden the stash well. They stuffed the dope inside a toilet paper roll as well as a bandmate's boot. Little did the guys know, their good fortune was just beginning. When the first exec they met hit stop on their tape after just 30 seconds and sent them packing, the band started to worry. But Petty later realized how lucky they were. A van from Florida rolls into town and the guys driving it get meetings? That was another time, he said. Miraculously, the band had interest from 3 labels during their whirlwind L.A. trip. Eager to share the news, Petty couldn't wait to get back to Florida. Meanwhile, his girlfriend was hatching a plan of her own. Petty's girlfriend, Jane Venio, was tall, blonde, and smart as a whip. Sensing he was on the verge of stardom, she decided it was time to make her move. After all, they'd been dating on and off for a year and a half, and Petty practically lived at her apartment. To her, the next step was obvious. They should tie the knot before heading to L.A. Petty's reaction? Well, let's just say he didn't exactly put up a fight. They say timing is everything, and Jane Venio nailed it. Can you blame her? Petty was laser-focused on landing a record deal, so close he could taste it, and everything else was just background noise. Venio, however, didn't want to get lost in the shuffle, so determined, in fact, that she decided to indulge her Machiavellian side. As part of Operation Marry Tom Petty, Venio pulled out all the stops, including enlisting his mother and grandmother. His mom, a good Christian woman, was an easy sell on the idea of making her 24-year-old wannabe rock star son an honest man. Too bad Petty did not share their enthusiasm. On the way to the church, he actually jumped out of the car and tried to make a break for it. His mother begged him to do the right thing, and he reluctantly caved. Little did he know, an even bigger twist was waiting for him after the "I do." Imagine the excitement. Petty, his bandmates, and his new wife had just arrived in Los Angeles, ready to chase their dreams. But on their very first night in the City of Angels, Venio dropped a doozy. She was pregnant. A stunned Petty quickly realized his mother probably knew about this all along. By 1974, Tom Petty had his hands full. His first daughter was born that year, and by 1975, his band Mudcrutch had fizzled out after a disappointing single. For a while, Petty drifted, but he wasn't done yet. Teaming up with two former Mudcrutch members, he formed the Heartbreakers and took a harder, sharper kick at the can. While Petty dove headfirst into his music, Jane Venio was left alone to raise their daughter. The cracks in their relationship were beginning to show, and Venio couldn't help but feel left behind. One of Petty's bandmates once described him as ambitious and scared, but also noted that Petty made damn sure you think he's neither one. By 1976, when Tom Petty and the Heartbreakers debuted, he must have been a bundle of nerves beneath his cool exterior. How many more swings could he take, especially with a family to support? The album didn't explode in the U.S. at first, but a buzz was building, particularly overseas in the U.K. Still, it was enough for Petty to finally see some rewards for his hard work. With his first real royalty check, he bought a Camaro. However, trouble was brewing, and it was about to test his resolve even further. Petty wasn't just a hitmaker, he was a fighter. Fans admire him for his authenticity and stubborn resolve, and in 1979, those traits were put to the ultimate test. The Heartbreakers record deal was sold to MCA, and Petty refused to be passed around by record execs without having a say in the matter. Instead, he came up with a bold, high-stakes plan. Petty wasn't about to roll over. Instead, he put everything he had worked for on the line by filing for bankruptcy as a last-ditch move to nullify his contract. Yes, creative and financial control were that important to him. During the court proceedings, opposing lawyers grilled him about his finances, even asking about his guitars. Petty's poker-faced response? A red one and a black one. The judge burst out laughing. Petty's courtroom charm was working. Realizing they were losing, his opponents settled out of court, handing Petty a better deal and leaving his principles intact. Even sweeter, the settlement set the stage for the band's breakout 1979 album, Damn the Torpedoes. Packed with hits like Refugee and Even the Losers, the album didn't just succeed, it went triple platinum. For Petty, victory never sounded so good. While battling MCA in court, Tom Petty was also dealing with something far more personal: his mother Kitty's declining health. It wasn't the first time she'd faced serious challenges. During Petty's childhood, she struggled with cancer and epilepsy. As Kitty Petty's health failed, Earl sunk to a new low. He began pressuring Tom to hire live-in nurses, but he and his brother suspected his real motive: companionship for Earl. As Petty put it, "Is this a nurse or some chick Earl's moving into the house?" It broke Petty's heart to see his mother endure such indignity, but life was pulling him in many directions. During the Whirlwind Damn the Torpedoes tour, Petty took a break from the fan frenzy, not to decompress, but to visit his mother, who was nearing the end. When he got to her hospital room, what he saw was unsettling. A well-meaning nurse had covered his mother's bed with magazine clippings of himself. The situation not only deepened his uneasy relationship with fame, but it also convinced him to avoid her funeral, a decision he would later deeply regret. Tom Petty's life was a tug-of-war between his skyrocketing career and his crumbling personal life. One night, after a grueling recording session, he returned home to find his wife passed out and unresponsive on the floor. Panicked, Petty called her friend, who dismissed it as heavy drinking, but this was clearly much worse. Determined to save his marriage, Petty came up with a plan, one that he would soon seriously regret. This wasn't the first or last time Benio's struggles with substances and mental health threatened to tear the family apart. And his credit, Petty didn't abandon his starter wife as his fame grew. Instead, desperate to keep the family together, just as he'd seen his own mother do, he turned to a classic yet questionable fix: having another baby. In 1982, the couple welcomed their second daughter, Anna Kim. Sadly, Benio's demons didn't loosen their grip. Picture this: you're taking a break from the rock star grind to relax with your kids and your fragile wife. Sounds peaceful, right? It was, until Petty woke up to the smell of smoke and realized his house was on fire. He sprang into action, hustling his wife and daughter outside, shouting for them to jump in the pool for safety. And just when it seemed things couldn't get worse, they did. Ever the fighter, Petty dashed back into the inferno and grabbed a garden hose, only to have it melt in his hands as the flames raged. The chaos mounted as his housekeeper, joining the fight, caught on fire and had to drench herself with the useless hose. When the smoke finally cleared, there was $1 million of damages. That wasn't the only shocker, though. The Petty family's shell shock became horror when they learned the truth. The fire wasn't an accident. Someone had been stalking the house, waiting for the right moment to take a can of lighter fluid and torch the place. Petty later admitted, "It frightened me so bad. To have somebody try to kill you is a really bad feeling." The upshot? The fire inspired Petty's much-loved 1989 hit, "I Won't Back Down." People often mistakenly think that shy people are aloof, and Tom Petty fell into this category. Though he seemed easygoing, he suffered from nearly debilitating stage fright, turning each performance into a personal battle. Yes, Mr. Laid-Back himself had such intense pre-show anxiety that it caused severe stomach pains and even voice problems. Part of the problem stemmed from the crushing weight of his fans' expectations. He admitted, "You want to be as wonderful as everyone thinks you are, and you know you're not." At least Petty and his kids could laugh about the truth behind his rock star persona. He once admitted, "They say the world pictures you as this laid-back, laconic kind of person, and actually you're the most intense, neurotic person we've ever met." Meanwhile, their mother's mental health struggles were worsening. Petty was reaching a breaking point, trying to hold it all together. Turns out, being a rock legend didn't make surviving family drama any easier. As Petty's daughter revealed, being married to someone who is mentally ill is really painful. "My mom could be a mean person." She added that her verbal mistreatment towards Petty was heartbreaking to witness. Eventually, Petty hit his limit and knew he had to make a devastating decision. Petty's 1994 solo album Wildflowers was his divorce album, even though the split wasn't official until 1996. In fact, as soon as his daughter heard the songs, she knew what was coming. It had taken Petty a very long time to get up the guts to leave this huge empire that he had built. But staying there was, in his own words, finishing him off. Too bad his newly found singlehood was not all it was cracked up to be. Coincidentally, 1996 was not only the year Petty's divorce was finalized, but it was also the year that he met Dana York at a Johnny Cash concert. He thought she was the most beautiful, wonderful thing in the world, and asked for her number. He likely didn't know the wisdom about relationships, taking half the time you were with someone, 22 years in his case, to get over them. Petty was in no way out of the woods, and he was stacking up the therapist's bills to prove it. One night when Petty and his girlfriend, Dana York, were hanging out at his house in the Palisades, chaos erupted. Outside, his ex-wife was at the end of the driveway in a limo, screaming and trying to get the driver to ram the gate. When the authorities arrived, Petty got a final unforgettable glimpse of Benio as her profile was lit up by the flashing lights. Despite the new love, despite the therapy, Petty was still not living his best life. His ex-wife wasn't making things easier. She tried turning his daughters against him and made multiple calls promising to end her own life. Depressed and desperate for an escape, Petty found one, a needle, and he was extremely good at keeping his new habit a secret, for now at least. During the recording of 1999's Echo, Petty was in a dark place, and it shows the album is famously one of his saddest, and his behavior was so erratic that producer Rick Rubin decided to make a move. Rubin went behind Petty's back and told his family that he was using. Luckily, Petty's girlfriend, Dana York, was ready to roll up her sleeves and help him fight his demons. York's father had been an addict, so she understood the nightmare of getting clean. Determined to help, she stood by Petty's side through rehab, and he later credited her with saving his life. The change was massive. Everyone in Petty's life kept thanking York for how different and happy Petty was now that he was clean. On June 3, 2001, Petty and York tied the knot in true Vegas style. They said they do in a low-key ceremony with about 20 close friends and family. Ever the rock star, Petty managed to squeeze the wedding in between tour dates because the show must go on. Speaking of making sacrifices for his music, Petty took it to a new level for the Heartbreakers' 40th anniversary tour in 2016. Disaster struck before the tour even began. During rehearsals, a 66-year-old Petty slipped and fractured his hip. The sensible thing would have been to postpone the tour and recover, but Petty did the furthest thing from that for some pretty selfless reasons. Petty's tours were anything but small time, with his final one raking in over $61 million. Petty was acutely aware that hundreds of people relied on him for their livelihoods. His wife, Dana, tried to explain his decision to play through the pain. His feeling was, "I can't do that to my crew. I can't do that to the fans. I can't do that to my band." It was all about honoring his commitment, no matter the cost to himself, and that cost would prove to be an extremely high price to pay. Petty's final tour was nothing short of grueling. He pushed himself through 53 shows while in intense pain from not only the hip fracture, but also emphysema and knee problems. On top of the physical ailments, Petty was also struggling with depression, anxiety, and insomnia. Just days after the tour ended, Petty's doctor confirmed that, tragically, his hip had fully broken under the strain. The news was a crushing blow for the rock icon. The same day Tom Petty received devastating health news, tragedy struck again. At 10:45 p.m., his wife found him unresponsive and called paramedics, panicked that he wasn't breathing. Following the dispatcher's advice, she performed CPR, and for a moment, it seemed to work. He began to breathe slightly better, but that glimmer of hope would fade all too quickly. EMTs rushed Tom Petty to the hospital after he went into full cardiac arrest, but the outlook was grim. With no brain activity, his family made the difficult decision to remove him from life support. A chaplain delivered last rites the next morning, and by 8:40 p.m., Petty, age 66, was gone. Surrounded by family, friends, and bandmates, the legendary rocker's journey came to a heartbreaking end. When the medical examiner's report came out, it painted a tragic picture. Petty had a dangerous mix of heavy-duty medications in his system. Xanax, oxycodone, temazepam, citalopram, fentanyl, and 2 fentanyl analogs, one 15 times and another 80 times stronger than morphine. In a statement, his wife Dana and one of his daughters said they were confident in the coroner's findings, and that Petty's passing was an unfortunate accident. A lot of rockers grasp for relevance as they age, but for Petty, capturing that lightning in a bottle wasn't so much of a problem. With every new release, he'd garner new generations of fans, and that magic lives on. Case in point, in 2023, his 1980s song Love is a Long Road appeared in the trailer for Grand Theft Auto 6, which caused it to skyrocket on Spotify and hit number 2 on the charts. From a moving cover of a Petty song at the 2024 Country Music Awards to a feature on Snoop Dogg's December 2024 album, Tom Petty's songs have their rare power to transcend time and genres. They helped him cope, and they help us too. If you enjoyed this Facton 8 video, give it a thumbs up and subscribe for more incredible stories. Want to say in who we cover next? Join our membership program through the link in the description for exclusive perks. Your support means everything to us. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next one.